Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Robyn Pashby.
And I'm Dr. Kelly Donahue.
This is our very first ever, Kelly, right? We're
Yeah.
going to call this our COVID Conversations. And so essentially what happened is Kelly and I were having a conversation about our clinical work and what we were seeing come up in our clients. And the more we got into this conversation, the more we realized that this conversation might actually help someone else. So we decided to record it and give it a shot.
Yeah. One of the things we started talking about was COVID-19, obviously, and how this is affecting our lives and the lives of our clients. And in the beginning, and even so now, there was a lot of anxiety. And we know that anxiety comes up when we have a perceived lack of control. And that certainly has been the case.
Yes.
And even though that is still very true in many ways, we've felt ourselves and have seen in our clients too a shift and or an addition to the anxiety, and that is many of us are feeling depressed.
Mm-hmm. And this conversation is happening on the heels of an interview I did this morning with a writer who's working on a product around the grief experience in COVID-19. And one of the things that I was talking through in that interview was just how much loss we're experiencing. And as this stretches on, the loss just keeps evolving. So there are more and more things to mourn and grieve. So, for example, seniors in high school right now will never get their last semester of high school back. And while we all have probably lost, tickets to an event or some important thing that will likely be rescheduled, there's also a lot of loss of things that won't be, we can't ever get them back. And obviously many people in the world are dealing with serious loss, meaning loss of a loved one, a family member, loss of a job. But in addition to that, and those very serious losses, there's also these sort of everyday losses that people are experiencing. And I think it's just starting to weigh on people in a way that is, quite frankly, depressing.
It is. It really is. And I've been talking to my clients about it from a perspective of dealing with stress. And in the beginning, we were sort of just in our stress response mode. It was like an acute stress. We just had to get through this time period, and we called on those very acute resources to do that. But now we're still in it, I think, much longer than most all of us could have anticipated. And those acute stress coping mechanisms aren't working in the same way. And as you mentioned, we're realizing that there are these ripple effects and these layers to these things that we're not only missing, but can never get back in the same way. So, in part, it's helpful, I think, to shift our mindset to more of like a long-term strategy. And that doesn't mean that the depression or anxiety goes away. We still feel that, but it requires a bit of a mindset shift, I think, to thinking about coping with these things for long term.
Mm-hmm. One of the examples I used with a client recently was, I said, it felt like for the first couple months we were all holding our breath, waiting to go back to normal. And now we're feeling sort of out of air. And it's been harder to stay focused on the positive things. It's been harder to find gratitude, and that's just weighing on people. And I think also the lack of routine. And I've had more than one client say Groundhog Day. Like it's the
Yeah.
same thing over and over and over again. And even the little rituals that would have helped define our days and weeks differently, whether it's a church service or a grocery store trip, those things are not what they used to be. So the days are blurring together and people are losing track of what day of the week it is even. And it's just really hard to stay upbeat in the light of that, all of those losses.
Yeah. And I think, we've taken steps to recreate so many of our tools and coping mechanisms, but being online just isn't the same as being in person for a lot of things. And I think that can be really challenging. And I think we're also starting to feel that too. And just the amount of time we're spending online and in video sessions. I think about our kids who are in now video school, and then they want to, like, some of their relaxation might be using video tools, or even for us as adults being in Zoom meetings for a lot of the day, if we're still fortunate enough to have work. And then getting to a place at the end of the day where you're tired from anxiety and feeling depressed, and all that you want to do is kind of sit on the couch and put on Netflix or scroll through social media. So that constant screen time is very draining on us. It's in
Yes.
part because of the blue light. It can impair our sleep, all of these things that we talk to our clients about.
Yes. The exhaustion piece. I've had so many people say, I do so much less during the day in terms of movement and, routine and getting out of the house and things. And I'm just twice as exhausted as I've ever been. And I think when we're sort of getting used to the fact that our sympathetic nervous system is overactivated, and that's not a good thing. That chronic activation is just so draining for people. And I think everyone is experiencing this differently. So clients of mine that live alone are facing different challenges. Lack of physical touch, for example, is something that I think people maybe took for granted or didn't realize how much we get just existing in the world. And people that have small kids at home and are trying to work and homeschool, obviously a number of challenges there. And then people who are older and have to depend on other people for support. Obviously, that's a major stressor. So really all people, all phases of life, all walks of life are being impacted by this. And I read in the Washington Post this morning that this pandemic was causing a mental health crisis in the United States and in the world. And I think that's true. And while obviously we're only two of us, I hope that even just little conversations like this can maybe help people feel less alone and help people understand that these feelings are normal and to be expected, and that we hope that people will reach out for support either to a healthcare provider or to even just to friends.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I know that over time you can just kind of feel beaten down, like you don't want to reach out to one more person. But we also know that there's power in doing that. And oftentimes, even if you don't feel like doing it, if you do it, you will feel better. And then you'll be more inclined to do the next little thing. So, we'd encourage you just to think about it in that way. One, to feel your feelings, and then two, to just do the next little thing. You don't have to think about feeling so much better or getting back to whatever normal might look like, but just to think about what's one thing that you can do for yourself or for someone else.
Right. Well, thanks for listening and stay tuned for more.